Right, I believe it's 7:15. Good evening, members, and good evening to anyone who might be watching on the Council's YouTube channel. We're here for the Licensing Committee. I'll go to apologies for absence, and we have apologies from Councillor Pell, Councillor Walters, and we also have, allegedly, we're supposed to have a substitute here, Councillor Finch, but
she's given her apologies.
So, yeah, they have. Okay. So, we come to, before we come to the agenda item 2, just the usual housekeeping items. We have no warning of any fire drills, so if the fire bell does go, then we'll exit through the doors at the back. And could anyone who's in doubt please turn off their mobile phone or switch it to silent. Thank you very much. Come to declarations of interest. And this is to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the code of conduct for members and having taken appropriate advice where necessary before the meeting. Moving to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. This item is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Licensing Committee held on 14th of September 2023, and I have a copy in front of me. This has been previously circulated. Could I have a proposer for the Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Prime. Can we have a vote on that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Chairman, it's unanimous in favour that they're an accurate record.
Sorry?
It's unanimous decision in favour of being an accurate record. Thank you, Chairman.
We need to sign the minutes. Very much. We come to item 4, which is public question time, but we have no registered speakers, so that is blank. We move on to item 5, which is the Hackney Carriage Proprietor Licences allocation on pages 5 to 8 of the agenda. And hand over to John for the report on this.
Thank you, Chairman. As you're aware, the Council limits the number of Hackney Carriage Proprietors licences in the district to 84, and these licences are allocated in accordance with the Council's policies for the allocation of Hackney Carriage Proprietor licences. 2 of these Hackney Carriage Proprietors licences have been returned to the Council and therefore required to be allocated. In accordance with the Council's policy, expressions of interest were invited over a 4-week period ending on the 13th of November 2023. All licensed drivers and private hire operators were notified of the availability of the Hackney Carriage Proprietor licences. During the expression of interest period, the Council received a total of 45 responses. 2 of these expressions of interest received were submitted in error and have been removed from the draw. This leaves a total of 43 expressions of interest to be entered into the draw. The numbers are allocated to individuals and are in the bundle and displayed here in the room and on the screen before you, 1 to 43. The individuals in the who have been entered into the ballot have been invited to attend the draw, so they are also able to follow the ballot live. The ballot will use a web-based number generator to draw the required lots. This is an independent system and has no affiliation with Braintree District Council and is publicly accessible website. The operation of the number generator and the drawing of lots will be controlled by a member of the governance and members team. This screen will be projected so that all present can watch the draw. The number range entered will be 1 to 43 to correspond with the expressions of interest received that detailed in paragraph 3.5. The website will then generate a random number in the range. A lot will then be drawn for each of the 2 Hackney Carriage proprietor licences available together with a reserve. The first number generated will be the winner or prospective licence holder of the first Hackney Carriage proprietor's licence, who will then be given the opportunity to complete an application within the next 28 days. The second number generated will be for the reserve for the available Hackney Carriage proprietor's licence. If the first lot drawn fails to complete an application within the required time frame, the second lot drawn will be given the opportunity to complete the application in the required time frame. If any number generated is duplicate of a previously generated number, it will be considered void and a new number generated. I'll now pass over to the Law and Governance Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, members. This is a system that you are familiar with, but I will, for the benefit of transparency, test the system. So on the screen is my desktop, and on the left-hand side of my screen is the calculator net, and then the other half of the screen is the list of those who have submitted expression of interest, and that's set out on page 6 of the report. Members, I'm just going to demonstrate how this works. So I'm going to enter in a value of 150 to 200, and then by clicking the green button here, that will generate a figure that appears in that top figure there. So this system has generated 171. So, Chairman, I'm now just going to repeat that so you can see that it will generate another number. So again, it's gone to 192. So I'm now going to put in the draw numbers, which is 1 to 43. And I will draw the first ballot. So this is for the first ballot, and the number will be the winner of the first plate. So the first number has been generated is number 33. Could I just ask the licence manager to confirm the name of that person listed at 33?
The name is Rashid Rahman. Number 33, Rashid Rahman.
Thank you. So I'm now going to draw the reserve for the first licence. So the reserve is number 43. Licence manager, could you confirm the recipient of number 43, please?
The recipient is Ahmadi Dawood. That's number 43, Ahmadi Dawood.
Thank you. So remember, that's concluded the first licence to be allocated. We'll now move to the second licence to be allocated. Again, I will just simply generate a number. I will not alter the numbers. So the next number is 31, and this is for the winner of the second ballot. If the licensing manager can confirm the name for me, please.
The winner of the second ballot is Ramazan Gorgalu, number 31, Ramazan Gorgalu.
Thank you. So, members, I'm now going to draw the reserve for the second ballot, and I'm just going to generate a number. So that is number 7. Could licensing manager confirm the result for number 7, please?
The winning number is Chidaberi C. Oki, number 7, Chidaberi C. Oki.
So members, that concludes the ballot for this evening. So all places currently held by the council have now been allocated, and those licences will go through the application process. Should the winners of the licence under the ballot not comply with the application process, then that will then be offered up to the reserve. Chairman, if the reserve do not complete with those applications, and those licences will be put forward for another ballot at a later date. Thank you, Chairman. So, Chairman, I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, so as this is no longer for the rest of the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Wisby. We move on now to item 6, which is the quantity restrictions on taxi licences, and this will be found on pages 9 to 149 of the agenda. I'd like to hand over to Daniel Molini to present this.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. Good evening. As you will be aware from the previous report, Braintree District Council currently places a quantity restriction on the number of Hackney carriage proprietors licences it issues. In accordance with provisions of Section 16 of the Transport Act of 1985, I will now refer to Hackney carriage proprietors licences as taxi licences or taxis for ease. The Council has discretion to restrict the numbers of licences it grants, subject to it being satisfied that there is no significant unmet demand for taxi services in the district. Some members may be aware that in March 23, which was last year now, the committee was provided with a comprehensive review of data and guidance regarding quantity restrictions more generally. The information in that report is a background paper to this report, and the report concluded by recommending that the quantity restriction at that time be removed. The committee agreed to maintain the quantity restriction on a number of taxi licences to the same number, but requested that an independent survey be commissioned to assess whether there was significant unmet demand for taxis in the district. This report sets out the results of that independent survey carried out by a company called LVSA, and the results of that survey are in Appendix 1 to the report. I will move over from the recommendations now, and I will come back to that at the end. So the Council has placed a quantity restriction on the number of taxi licences for at least 2 decades. In 1996, the committee agreed that an independent survey should be commissioned at regular intervals, normally every 3 years. The last survey was undertaken in 2016, and it determined that there was no significant unmet demand for taxis in the district at that time. The survey was scheduled for 2020, however this was not undertaken due to the COVID-19 pandemic, nor would it have been appropriate to do so. The Department for Transport, DFT, recommended to licensing authorities to delay their unmet demand reviews beyond the 3-year interval, as it was considered that any review during this period would not be sufficiently typical to be of any value. So, as we are aware, the committee have already determined that the restriction was to remain, but they wanted more information and they wanted an independent survey to be carried out. So I'm just going to move on to section 4 now and look at the survey results in brief. I'm not going to go into too much detail as there's a lot of information here, and as you're aware that the report is quite detailed and there's a lot more information about the rank surveys that took place. So rank observations were conducted at 6 ranks in the district. This was undertaken for a 2-week period between 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, 18th of June, through to 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, 2nd of July, 2023. The tables set out the rank observations. There is further tables which provide a lot more detail about rank observations on a daily basis, but this provides a snapshot. Table 1 provides a snapshot for week 1, and Table 2 provides a snapshot in week 2. The tables tell you how many taxis departed the ranks empty, how many taxis departed the ranks with passengers, total taxis departing the ranks, and total number of passengers departing the ranks. Now, the surveys are undertaken by cameras being put on the ranks so they could see the movements of taxis and people to the taxis, and then it's a manual task to actually work out if a taxi left with somebody in it or without it, or if how long somebody was waiting for a taxi, or how long somebody waited before they left. So it's quite an in-depth study. Under paragraph 4.3, but the results were that during a 2-week period, there were 3,730 taxis were hired from the rank, and 897 departed from a rank empty. So when comparing these results to the survey in 2016, the survey highlighted that rank hires in 2023 were generally lower than in 2016. So they highlighted that the number of rank hires was 75% lower compared to 2016 at the station approach rank in Braintree. Over the same period, 24% lower at the Manor Street rank and 19% lower at the Albert Road rank at Whitton train station. And all in all, between the three ranks, this was around 27% lower than the number of hires observed in 2016, which is not necessarily to be unexpected. So the observations included an assessment of passenger waiting times. So the observations highlighted that 1,156 passengers out of a total of 5,147 passengers, which equates to 22%, had to wait for a taxi for a length of time. The survey highlighted small levels of passenger waiting at the station approach rank in Braintree, significant levels of passenger waiting recorded at the Albert Road Whitton train station rank, predominantly at night times, and passenger waiting was also observed at Manor Street Braintree rank during both daytime and nighttime hours. The survey highlighted that most passengers had to wait for a taxi, did so for less than 15 minutes. The survey also highlighted that 179 passengers had to wait more than 15 minutes, 30 people waited more than 30 minutes, and the longest wait observed was 63 minutes at the Manor Street rank, Braintree. I do draw your attention, members' attention to 4.9 of the paragraph, because I believe that wait has to be put into context. It did occur at 12:59 on Friday the 23rd of June, which is the early hours of a Friday morning. So is this a time when it would have been expected to obtain a taxi, or would it have been expected for a taxi to wait for passenger to be at that rank at that time? Observations highlighted that some intending passengers waiting at ranks gave up and walked away, which can be a measure of latent unmet demand. This equated to 130 passengers, which represents about 19% of all waiting passengers and 2.5% of all passengers recorded. So finally, these observations highlighted the proportion of taxis operating from the ranks was around about 16% of the total licensed by the council. It's important to note this is not necessarily the proportion of all taxis working at any one time, and it is possible that some taxis were engaged in pre-booked hires during the recording period. The Section 5 referred to a public survey that was undertaken during this process, and the council received 211 responses. So from a personal point of view, I feel that's quite successful, and that is a fairly decent number of responses. It may not be necessarily statistically viable, but it's a decent level of response that we received. However, it is acknowledged that within the survey, when analysing the results obtained, there is a need to consider factors which may influence the results of the survey. So, for instance, online surveys are often used by people who have a particular issue to raise with respect to the subject under consultation, whereas people with no strong views or who have not experienced any problems or particular benefits are less likely to participate. So, the survey highlighted that 51% of respondents felt there were not enough taxis operating in the Braintree district, 15% felt that there were about the right number, 9% felt there were too many taxis, and 25% didn't have an opinion or didn't know. We went on to ask the public many questions, which you'll see in the report. But just to summarise, we were also asking to rate the quality of their last journey with a score between 1 to 5. And as you can see, the ratings are in table 3 presented in front of you at 5.4. There are more detailed responses regarding this in the report. The public were also asked to see if they had experienced any problems with local taxi services, and table 4 sets out the answers to those responses. And as you can see in table 4, that they are in front of you here. The survey also wanted to find out what key stakeholders and the trade felt about the taxi trade in the district with respect to this issue. There are many other issues, and there's a lot of data in the report again. So a list of key stakeholders is set out on page 54 of the survey, and the results are shown in section 5 of the report. The Braintree District licence holders were invited to complete an online survey. We received 44 responses, and the results of that are shown in section 6 of the survey report. The trade were asked how many journeys on average per week they were picked up from the ranks and by hailing, together with how many hires they picked up from pre-booked hires. And the survey highlighted indicated that rank hires accounted for around about 38% of all taxi hires, and 46% of taxi respondents indicated that less than 50% of hires are currently derived from ranks, while 15% of taxi respondents indicated that none of the hires that they fulfil are derived from ranks. Respondents were asked whether they felt that there were sufficient taxis. 92% that normally drive a taxi said that there were, whereas 8% said there weren't. Those that drove both a taxi and private hire vehicles said there was 60% had enough vehicles, and 40% said no. And this went down to drivers who just drive a private hire vehicle said that there was 22% said there was enough, and 78% said there wasn't. In 6.6, the trade were then asked how many taxis they felt there should be in the district, and you can see the results in front of you. But around about 73% of the drivers of taxis said there should be no change, and this increased to 75% of those who drive both private hire and taxis, and it decreased to those who just drive private hire vehicles to 44%. The trade were asked if removing the limit on the number of taxis in Braintree would benefit the public by reducing wait times at ranks. 36% of taxi drivers strongly disagreed with the statement, with 60% of those respondents who drive a taxi private hire vehicle also disagreeing. And the table sets out below the responses. So in section 7 of the report refers to section 9 of the Unmet Demand Survey report, which provides a detailed evaluation of unmet demand and explains the significance to the trade and to the context within the district itself. I will read out this paragraph. I do apologise, but it's important to define what does constitute unmet demand. When a person turns up at a Hackney carriage taxi rank and finds there is no vehicle there available for immediate hire, this normally leads to a queue of people building up, some of whom may walk off, which is taken to be latent demand, while others will wait until a vehicle collects them. Later passengers may well arrive when there are vehicles there, but because of the queue will not obtain a vehicle immediately. The standard of what we call incidence of significant unmet demand is a statistical measurement calculation. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we do have the expert here. But if any members have questions regarding that, then we can answer those for you. However, statistically, a value of under 80 indicates there is generally no unmet demand, whereas a value over this indicates there is. The value presented in the survey undertaken in Braintree indicated an ISD value of 5,766.9, to be precise. This provides a strong indication that there is currently unmet demand above a level which is significant. The last ISUD value reported in 2016 was 27.2, and as you can see, that was much lower than 80, but much lower than the value reported in the survey last year. So the conclusion is, based on the evidence gathered, that there is currently unmet demand, and the level of unmet demand was significant within the district. So, to comply with Section 16 of the Transport Act 1985, the Council was required to consider whether it should maintain the current quantity restriction in place and to introduce measures which will reduce the levels of unmet demand to a value which is below the levels which are deemed significant. So I'm just going to jump a bit here to option 9, and there are a number of options presented in the survey report, detailed in sections 11 of the report. So there were 4 principal options presented. Option 1 was to wait for driver numbers and private hire operations to increase to meet pre-booked hire demand and free Hackney carriage capacity to meet demand at the taxi ranks. Option 2 was to increase the number of Hackney carriage vehicle licences to enable more Hackney carriages to meet demand at taxi ranks. And the increase could be to a new specified limit or to remove the limit altogether. Option 3 was to employ alternative measures to encourage the existing Hackney carriage fleet to prioritise rank-based demand over pre-booked hire demand in order to reduce passenger waiting at the taxi ranks. And option 4 was to develop an approach which provides an immediate increase in the number of Hackney carriages licences available. This was coupled with a scheduled increase in Hackney carriage fares. These measures would be in anticipation that if these licences are taken up and put into operation, the pattern of operation will be similar to the current practices, which is i.e. undertaking a mixture of rank-based hires, pre-booked hires and contract hires. In paragraph 9.3, pages 95 to 97, the report provides a detailed analysis of each of these options in turn. But what I will say is the independent report recommends option 4, which is to increase the number of taxis by increasing the number of taxi licences by 10% specifically. So in effect, this would equate to 8 additional taxi licences, increasing the level of taxis from 84 to 92. The report acknowledges that it would take time for the measures proposed by option 4 to become effective, which would include the introduction of new vehicles by way of ballot and the review of taxi fares. It was felt that this increase would make a significant difference to the current level of passenger waiting at ranks. While the proposed increase may not fully eliminate all passenger waiting, it would bring the current level of unmet demand to a level which is below the current level of significant unmet demand. And the proposed increase, instead of complete removal of the QR, which is the quantity restriction, would help maintain the operational viability of taxis at other times of the week. In effect, there's not too many taxis flooding the market in the Braintree district, which would make it unviable for the taxi driver to sustain a suitable living. In 9.5, it's important to note that the recommendation and the recommended option is contrary to the proposal made in the Licensing Committee report of 21st March 2023, which was to remove the restriction entirely. This will include a review of taxi fares at the next available opportunity to see if the level of fares are set at the right level, and the feeling is that they not necessarily are, and it could be increased to encourage more drivers and more taxis to use taxi ranks, especially at unsociable hours, because it's more viable to be on those ranks. So just quickly, I'm just going to just put down the recommendation, which is recommended that the quantity restriction is maintained, with the number of Hackney carriage proprietor licence issued by the council being increased by 8 to 92. And should the committee agree to the recommendation above, it is further recommended to the committee to agree an exemption to the council's Hackney carriage allocation policy of 2014, that 4 of the increased taxi licences, which is 4 out of the 8 above, will be made available to non-wheelchair accessible electric vehicles. If the licences are not allocated in the next available ballot for taxi licences, any unallocated licences will be allocated in accordance with the policy. I'm not intending to say too much more, but what I will say, if you just bear with me for 1 second, there is a section, Section 8 of the report, which talks about the allocation of the taxi licences, which are wheelchair accessible vehicles and electric vehicle exemptions. I'm not going to talk about this section, but if anyone has any questions on that, then please ask me. Thank you very much, and I'll return you back to the chair.
Thank you very much for the marathon report. I'll open it up for discussion now amongst members. But before I do so, I should like to say that there is an awful lot in this report, and it would be good before we have any proposal or seconder of the motion to have some discussion on this. So, would anyone like to speak? Councillor Wright, Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Chair. I've got about 2 or 3 points. First, there's no data about the rank in Newland Close in the car park. There's a rank in the car park in just off a High Street in Witham. Was that not surveyed, or is that not used?
That rank is not in use at the moment, and it's just one space, and it wasn't surveyed, no.
Right.
And I would be very confident that it wouldn't be significant to be surveyed.
Yeah. No, because it came up that there was a rank that needed to be in Witham Town Centre to stop people walking to the station, because a lot of the problems at night time is people walking from the town to the station and waiting for taxis. So I thought that, it may be that option to expand that rank or move that rank
To that location.
to another location. Not quite sure where, but because the High Street would then take away a lot of parking spaces.
Chairman, can I be clear that this survey is not looking at the division of ranks? This is purely looking at
I'm just saying that.
But I just need to make that clear, because whilst you are making a valid point, it's not something at which you can
my
determine this
point was
evening.
about whether it's surveyed or not. But right, the other thing, it says there's a lot of taxis leaving the rank without fares. Could this be the fact that they're getting phone calls from people on trains or businesses, and they're getting a private hire or a booked hire, and they're leaving for that reason? Was that a question asked?
I could make an attempt to answer this, and I do apologise. I've not introduced a colleague from LVSA, who are a consultant who undertook this work. The colleague is Ian MacDonald, and I think it might be a good idea if Ian tries to answer this question, and if you need me to answer more, I can certainly do so.
Before he does so, I'd just like to make the point that this is a very exhaustive survey. A lot of research has been done over and observations over 2 weeks with cameras, etc. I don't think at this point we can speculate or come up with possible reasons for why results have.
No, I was just asking the question. Was that that question asked why they left the rank?
You can answer.
Sure. Okay.
That's it would be reasonable to assume that at least some of the departures were in response to a booking made by phone or other means. The feedback from the trade indicates that they do undertake a lot of pre-booked hires alongside the rank-based hires. So that would be a fairly normal reason for leaving the rank empty.
Thank you.
Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Councillor Wright has actually asked the first part I was going to say about the other rank in Witham, whether it was surveyed or not. And my other point, I take what Emma has said tonight, is it in the right place? That's that. But my feeling is that we do have to be careful when we're discussing numbers of taxis and private hire, hackney carriage, whichever, is that we don't have too many people chasing the same pot of customers, because that we're never going to not have an unmet demand. There's always going to be something coming. You can go into any supermarket and they can have all 16 tills open and 12 people not serving, and people say they're wasting their time. But at the moment somebody's queuing up for something, why haven't they opened another till? And that's obviously the same with the taxi thing. We've got to get a balance where, as you've mentioned yourself, that the taxi drivers can make a living in a reasonable amount of hours to still be able to spend time with their families, maintain their car properly, and have a decent work balance. And I do think we do need to still have restrictions. Free for all is not the answer, in my opinion. Okay.
I'd just like to say that you are fairly new to the council, and at the last survey we carried out, which was 5-6 years ago,
2016.
yeah, 2016, there was no unmet demand, and Dan has told you about the very low numbers that were recorded at the time, and as opposed to a very high number this time. So there's a significant difference this time. But,
I do think, with respect to that, Mr. Chairman, people are complaining or making their points more forcibly now than they was a few years ago. I've commuted since I was 16 years of age, and there was always people waiting for taxis outside Whittam Station. There's never not been an unmet demand.
okay, thank you. Councillor Schwinn?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I welcome the report that's in front of us tonight in the Licensing Committee, and I also welcome the data and the survey that has gone through it and the resulting quantitative analysis that has followed that data, because it really is an indication, although I accept that the responses is not as high as one would like, I do think that they are a reasonable representative, and it's very important that we went out and had that consultation, of course. But the quantitative analysis of that does seem to indicate the report's recommendation increase due to the unmet demand. And as you will notice in the report, the previous report was 6, 7, 8 years ago now, was actually completely different to tonight's recommendation. I think the other thing to bear in mind about this is the time that it may be involved in getting, should the committee vote for this tonight, take into account also the growth of Braintree and our towns and rural places, because, as you know, the amount of planning that is being passed, not only in Braintree and Whittam, but also in places like Houston and our sort of major key services villages, even places like Earls Colne, have got significant growth. And I think that also needs to be factored into our decision making, because it's an important aspect that we can actually respond to the needs of what the data that was in front of us tonight. So I think there's a lot there to support the quantitative analysis, the report, and so overall I really do welcome that, but I'm very interested to hear what other committee members may comment on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Van Dongen.
Thank you, Chairman, and I too welcome the report, exhaustive report, exhausting, and on balance, I feel that the figures involved and do indicate that there is room for the 10%, which also has the way you're framing it, or the way it has been framed, is a useful way of increasing the percentage or proportion of wheelchair
Accessible vehicles.
okay, and introducing some electric potentially. I would, on the other hand, not on the other hand, but I would as well say that both in your report and in the LBSA one, there's the indication that rank hires or hires from the rank form a minor proportion of the hires of hackney carriages. Okay? Therefore, a lot of the hackney carriages are actually doing, in a sense, private work. So by, the way I see it, potentially by adding another 10% or 8 hackney carriages, they are not necessarily going to go to the ranks. We just need to be aware of that. May I finally just ask a question? At the ranks, are there any signs with phone numbers for companies? And if not, and perhaps not for today, but I think it would be useful to look into that. I've lived and worked in many countries and had to take taxis. And in many cases at the ranks there would be maybe even a phone in the old days, but certainly some phone numbers to ring, which would certainly help at 3 in the morning.
I take on board your comments, Councillor Randolph, and just so you know, there is a telephone at the Witham rank, but that's, I believe, the taxi drivers that are answering the telephone. So there is one at that rank. But I take on board your comments regarding, whether it would be useful to have other numbers. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have Councillor Ayton and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to sort of give my thanks to the people who completed this report. It's clearly very in-depth, and I spent a lot of time. I've got a question. I wasn't in office when I think there was a report in March done, and this committee recommended to get rid of the restriction completely. I'm just curious as to why was it not? Sorry if I misunderstood.
Apologies, Councillor Ayton. The recommendation was to keep the restriction.
Oh, keep the restriction.
Keep the restriction.
Oh, okay,
and that's why the report was commissioned.
Did they, as a result, ask for this report to be undertaken? Oh, okay. That's fine.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for those very comprehensive reports. Actually, really helpful to have all that detail. And thank you too. I'm pleased that we've done this survey. I think this report indicates the fact that we went out and did an independent survey, and it has produced some very interesting statistics. I mean, when you look at the results, it's quite interesting to see how some ranks are very popular, if you like, very busy, and other ranks have very little trade at all. And it is interesting to have it in black and white, that breakdown. A couple of questions. I mean, I think that the number that really sort of jumps out at me is this huge figure for unmet demand of 5,000+%. I did sort of have to look at that again, so have I misread that? But could you just explain a little bit, talk a bit more about that figure? And
Is it possible to explain that without losing us?
I'll try and keep it as simple as I can. First of all, it's an index value, not a percentage. And the value goes up exponentially as the level of passenger weighting increases. So a value of 2,000 versus a value of 4,000 doesn't mean it's twice as bad. It means it's a bit worse, but it's an exponential growth rate. And once it gets above several hundred, it goes up very, very quickly. So large values just mean that there is a significant level of unmet demand. There is always some form of unmet demand. We've never done a survey where there isn't some, but usually, quite often, it's the occasional passenger having to wait for a taxi to arrive at the rank from time to time. What we do is the data is taken together, so it's the proportion of passengers who have to wait is one factor. When this occurs is another factor, because daytime passenger waiting is viewed more heavily than nighttime passenger waiting, where there are larger peaks in demand quite often. It takes into account the fact that you can't always meet every peak in demand. It's not practical, so it needs to be kind of evened out over the day. And the average extent of passenger waiting as well. So it's not just the number of incidences, but it's the degree of waiting. I don't know if that makes any more sense, but really it's, the key point is it's not a percentage, it is an index. It grows exponentially. It's a large number, but it's not necessarily to be taken as a frighteningly large number, because relatively small changes in provision or demand will change that number quite significantly.
May I just ask another question, Jim? And just a further comment. I think the further comment really is that it's obviously we are the licensing authority for the whole of Braintree District, but there's quite clearly from this quite a significant difference between Whittam train station, which doesn't surprise me at all because there's trains arriving there every 10 minutes virtually. It's fantastic service that we're lucky to have in the district, but compared to Braintree, so it's quite difficult to try and to cater for the whole district with such different demand across the district. The only, I think the points that have been made by other councillors about the fact that Hackney carriage taxis can also operate as privately hired vehicles as well, and that that one way to increase the availability of taxis on the rank is to try to encourage them to take more work from the rank than private hire. But so I was just interested in option 3, which was to employ alternative measures to encourage the existing Hackney carriage fleet to prioritise rank-based demand. I mean, what sort of measures, realistically could you take that would achieve that outcome if one wanted to consider that?
That's fine. Yeah. There's two basic measures which can be employed. One is to change the vehicle type specification to make it easier to introduce more vehicles or to cheaper vehicles and make them cheaper to run. Another one is to increase the fares to increase income and encourage more people to actually operate the taxis. In one respect, it doesn't matter how many taxis you have if there's no one driving them. And you can actually get greater capacity out of a fleet having more drivers operating the same number of vehicles. And that more directly relates to the income level that's available to them. There are only so many passengers out there, and if there's more earnings to be gained from that demand pool, if you like, it makes the trade more attractive to more people. So these are the alternative measures, really.
Thank you very much, Mr. Booth. Do we have any more points or questions?
And may I ask one more question? So,
Okay.
I was just wondering, as you're here, the expert, do you see that there's been a change in the level of demand for taxis as a result of it? I mean, I was wondering whether, for instance, the cost of a living crisis has resulted in increased demand for taxis because people are choosing not to own or only own one car per family or something like that, or whether it's resulted in a decrease.
There have been changes over a number of years. There's many various different reasons for that. Potentially some changes in car ownership. There's changes in work patterns. There's changes in income levels. There's changes in the way that people actually obtain licensed vehicles. Go back 15 years, no one had an app on their phone. A lot of people didn't have phones. Nowadays, people are more and more used to being able to use an app or telephone to hire a vehicle. So that's the nature of demand. And in Braintree, as in other places, the fleet have adapted to cater for that demand. So it makes sense that the fleet cater for more a greater proportion of pre-booked hires over time, because that's where the demand is. They still do cater for demand at the taxi ranks, but the visible bit that we see from the surveys is how well the taxi rank demand is catered for. And that's really what we're addressing here. It's not the overall provision for all demand. And potentially, in fact, it's likely that the majority of demand is for pre-booked hires, not from the ranks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schwer and Councillor Van Dijk.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the fact that the potential allocation of any extension of the taxi licences. I do welcome in the report the fact that there are some real increase of vehicle accessibility to passengers, but also the electric as well, because I do feel that that ties very much into our climate strategy action within the council as well. And of course, this will have some not only environmental benefits, but noise. Obviously, that will include noise and air quality as well. So I do welcome that undertaking in this report as well, to recommend those as well, because I think it's very important as we move forward, which shows, again, leadership from Braintree District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dijk.
Thank you, Chairman. Just getting back to kind of the nub of the whole thing. In March 2023, the Licensing Committee had a report from the officers recommending the removal of the QR, which was, I think I'm right in saying, was not accepted by the committee. And now, getting on to a year later, we have another report with a number of options, including, and am I right, including but recommending the addition of 10, but not the removal of the QR. Could I just ask a bit about your thinking behind this change? It's not a criticism or anything. It's just, I'm just interested in how you come to change your view.
Well, if I can just stop you there, we've got to a point now where we should be asking for a vote. I'll take one more brief question from Councillor Aitan, rather than get off the track. Can we sort of discuss the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a brief comment that, we as a committee have a duty to service the community, and obviously the population is growing. We've all been, I think, got off at Whittam or Braintree, and there's always taxis there. I don't think there was a massive unmet demand, but it's clear we do need a few more cabs, and there is a demand. Obviously, as we saw from this ballot, there's 40-odd people who want to take up a licence, so there's also people that want to do it. I think it's good that we're trying to strike a balance, not sort of make it a free-for-all, as Councillor Heath said, just slowly increase it, see what happens, maybe put the fares up, etc. I think it's good that it's slowly going up, and I would support this report, and I think anyone would have a hard time disagreeing with this report, because it's only 8 more cabs on the street. But that's it, really. Sorry.
As I say, I think we reached a point where we are looking for a proposer for the motion.
Chairman, sorry, can I just make it clear, because I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding around the quantity restrictions and why the authority does that. The quantity restriction is against the number of licences that we issue. It is a provision within the legislation which taxis are licensed under, which allows us to restrict the numbers of licences that it issues. And your obligation is to be satisfied that there is not a demand for taxis. it's not about catering for the trade. It's not catering for future development things. We have an obligation as a licensing authority that we safeguard our decision by being satisfied that your decision to keep a quantity restriction is correct based upon the evidence it has before you. And that's the evidence that's set out within the policy. I just want to make that clear for you, because by restricting the number of licences that we issue by a quantity restriction, if we are challenged in the courts, and it is a real possibility it can be challenged, there's a large area of litigation on this, we have to satisfy that we have established that we have been reasonable in establishing that there is no significant unmet demand. So what you're looking at is being satisfied there is no significant unmet demand based upon the evidence that you've got before you. So it's a similar test as you have in other forms of the legislation, is that you cannot do something unless you are satisfied. With the fit and proper person test, you cannot grant a licence unless you are satisfied. So I just want to make that clear for members, because quite rightly you need to examine this, but from the point at which you are examining this, I just think that maybe members have departed from in understanding what your starting point is that licences can be refused but only if you are satisfied there is no significant unmet demand for services carriages within the district. Just want to make that clear to members. Thank you.
Thank you. So, again, can we have a proposer? Councillor Schwer, seconded by Councillor Prime.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm proposing, as the recommendations as laid out in the report under section 2.1 and 2.2.
We put that to the vote, please. All those in favour?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could you read out the recommendation?
Yes, the recommendation is as 2.1 in the report. It is recommended that the quantity restriction is maintained, with the number of Hackney Carriage proprietor taxi licences issued by the council being increased by 8 to 12.
To 92, Chairman.
Sorry, 8 to 92.
And 4 of them being accessible.
2.2?
Yes, and 2.2, should we agree, it's further recommended that the committee agree an exemption to the council's Hackney Carriage allocation policy 2014, that 4 of the increased taxi licences, 4 out of the 8 mentioned, will be made available to non-wheelchair accessible electric vehicles. Our standard policy is for all new licences to be wheelchair accessible. So we've made an amendment to that in this case, that 4 will be non-wheelchair accessible, but they will be electric vehicles. And if the licences are not allocated in the next ballot for taxi licences, which will be at the next meeting, any unallocated licences will be allocated in accordance with our policy. In other words, they'll be fully wheelchair accessible. So on that basis, can we have a vote for the recommendation, please?
Unanimous, Chairman.
That's unanimous. Yeah. Thank you very much. That motion is approved. Go to licensing committee update, which will be given by John Meadows.
Thank you, Chairman. This is report is for information only, and members are just required to note the content. Regarding licensing applications, since the previous licensing committee, we've determined the licence for Bakerlicious in Market Hill, Coggeshall. A premises licence was granted subject to conditions imposed by the licensing authority following an objection from an interested party. Regarding drivers' panels, the chairman of the licensing committee exercised the delegation to suspend driver's licences on 3 separate occasions. The suspensions were carried out as a result of information received to ensure the licensing authority's primary role of public protection was met. Drivers' panels have considered 18 matters since the last licensing committee hearing. The drivers' panel has met on 6 occasions to deal with the following matters. These are all detailed in your bundle. I don't propose to go through every single matter, but if any member has specific questions regarding them, I'm obviously happy to answer them. In September 2023, licensing officers teamed up with colleagues of Chelmsford City Council to undertake proactive inspections at Chelmsford City Racecourse. Also, officers have undertook proactive inspections with taxi and private hire colleagues from Essex Police. Councillor John Moore also attended as part of the operation. The licensing team has seen a steep increase in the number of applications for drivers and vehicle licences in the last 2 years. The council issued its 1,000th driver licence in November 2023. This milestone presents a significant effort from several teams within the council. The Department for Transport has reissued its best practice guidance for local authorities. The government also plans to extend licensing hours for European football championships. Obviously, the licensing team has been dealing with the ban regarding XL bullies as we license them. We have historically licensed breeders, and we're involved in the helping ensure that they comply with the current legislation as it's been introduced and rolled out. There's a number of other points on the report, but if there's any interest for members, I'm happy to answer any specific questions. Thank you.
Chairman, could I just also add something that came up after the report was issued? Just let members know there is no statutory 182 guidance for the Licensing Act. That came out in December, but it was also then received a further revision this week. So, and that's not yet published on the government's website. So once we have copies, know what copy of the statutory guidance that we're dealing with, we'll make sure that all members have a copy of that statutory guidance emailed to them, because that's one of your key documents that you need to have at your elbow when sitting on a licensing hearing, considering applications under Licensing Act. But that's an update that came this week, so apologies for not being able to add that to John's report. But we were all surprised when the December update came out, because we just had one early in August and then to have another one 4 weeks later. We're just trying to keep that up to date as best we can, so we will circulate that as soon as possible for you.
Thank you very much, John. Is that all you were going to say? Yeah. Okay. This item is merely for noting. I'd just like to say that with the item 5.2, my neighbours were surprised and delighted to see me taken away in a large police van, but I had to explain that it was purely innocent. Anyway, shall we? Could I have a proposer to note this? Councillor Heath, and seconder, Councillor Van Dal. That report is noted. We come now to urgent business. In public session, we have no urgent business, and we have no urgent business in the private section. So that draws this meeting to a conclusion at, I think, 2019.